Welcome to the deep dive. How many times have you looked at the clock and thought, where did the last hour go?
Happens to the best of us.
Or maybe you've got a deadline looming that feels incredibly far away until suddenly, whoops, it's tomorrow.
Oh, definitely. That's suddenly it's here feeling.
If that sounds familiar, especially if you maybe have ADD, the inattentive type, or ADHD, we're diving into something called time blindness today.
Right. And it's really more than just occasionally losing track of the minutes. Think of it like trying to navigate without a good internal compass for time.
Okay, an internal compass.
Yeah, that's closer to what time blindness feels like, a real difficulty in, sensing time's passage, estimating how long tasks will actually take, and sticking to schedules.
So it describes the experience. It's not like a formal diagnosis itself.
Exactly. Think of it as a description, a common thread in these experiences, not a clinical term you'd find in the DSM necessarily.
Got it. It's like time can feel slippery, hard to grasp.
Very much so.
And it shows up in different ways, right? Sometimes it's just that basic feeling like, is that 5 minutes or 15? Our actual perception of duration can be really off.
That's one key part. Then there's the estimation piece you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. I'm constantly thinking this will only take me 10 minutes and then an hour later.
Yeah.
Yeah, still working on it.
That underestimation is classic. But it's not just about the present moment or future estimates. Time blindness can also mess with how we remember the past.
How so?
The sequence of events can get jumbled up. And even something that sounds simple, like time reproduction, trying to do a task for the same amount of time as you did before, that can be surprisingly difficult.
Wow. So it hits time from multiple angles.
It really does, a real mix of challenges.
So in this deep dive, we're not just going to define this. Our real mission here is to unpack what might be going on and, maybe more importantly, give you some actual practical strategies, things you can use.
Absolutely, because one of the core experiences people report is this feeling of time being almost shapeless, amorphous. It just lacks that clear structure that others seem to perceive naturally.
Shapeless. That's a good word for it. Yeah.
And this often leads to a very, very present-focused mindset. It creates a kind of now versus not now, or way, way later split.
The now versus not now trap. I know that one. It's like anything that isn't right in front of us, demanding attention right now, just doesn't carry the same weight or urgency. It's in the vague not now zone.
Exactly. And that creates what people often call a shorter time horizon, planning for next week or next month. It can feel abstract, almost like planning for a different lifetime.
Which makes long-term goals really challenging.
Extremely. And this is where that strong connection with ADD or ADHD really comes into focus.
Yeah.
While anyone can experience aspects of this, it's particularly common for individuals with ADHD across all presentations, but maybe especially visible with the inattentive type.
Okay, so let's connect those dots. How do the core inattentive symptoms play into this?
Well, think about it. Difficulty with sustained attention makes it incredibly hard to just keep tabs on how much time has passed while you're focused on something else. Or even when you're trying to focus, time just slips away unnoticed.
Right, and the challenges with organization and planning. If you struggle to organize your thoughts or steps, trying to build and stick to a time-based schedule can feel like, well, like trying to nail jelly to a wall.
Great analogy. Plus, you add in working memory deficits. It becomes tough to hold time-related information actively in your mind, like appointment times, or the sequence of steps in a longer project, or even just remembering what you were supposed to do at 3 p.m.
And let's be honest, the general forgetfulness that often comes with ADHD doesn't exactly help with remembering deadlines or appointments either.
Not at all. Now, what's really fascinating, I think, is that time blindness isn't really a standalone issue in itself. It's more of a signal, an outward manifestation that something else is going on under the hood.
Okay, like what?
Specifically with what neuroscientists call executive functions. These are those crucial higher-level thinking skills, mostly managed by the prefrontal cortex of the brain.
The front part of the brain, right.
Exactly. Things like planning, organizing, initiating tasks, just getting started, managing time effectively, regulating emotions, controlling impulses. Think of the prefrontal cortex as the conductor of the brain's orchestra.
I like that, the conductor. So this control center for getting things done, including managing our relationship with time. If there are differences in how that area functions or how it's connected, which we often see in ADHD.
Then it directly impacts the ability to perceive, manage, and use time effectively. That's the link.
Which leads to a really critical point you wanted to make.
Yes. Absolutely crucial. Time blindness is not, I repeat, not a sign of laziness, irresponsibility, or some kind of lack of willpower.
It feels important to really emphasize that.
It is, because it's so often misinterpreted that way, but it's rooted in genuine neurological differences. Differences in brain structure, function, and connectivity, particularly within those executive function networks we just mentioned. It is not a character flaw, it's a difference in brain processing.
It's like the ADHD brain might have a fundamentally different internal clock, or maybe the clock runs erratically, and it's absolutely not for lack of trying to set it right.
Precisely. So many individuals put in incredible effort, really, monumental effort sometimes, to be punctual, to be organized, to meet deadlines, but still find themselves constantly battling the clock.
And that mismatch between effort and outcome, that must be incredibly frustrating and, frankly, demoralizing over time.
It really can be. That constant struggle against something that feels invisible, especially when maybe colleagues or family members don't fully understand it, can lead to a lot of internalized shame, guilt, and really harsh negative self-talk.
Feeling like you're failing even when you're trying your absolute hardest.
Exactly. Feelings of inadequacy can become a really heavy burden to carry.
Which loops back to why self-compassion is just so vital here. Recognizing that these challenges stem from how your brain is wired, not from some personal failing. That's got to be the first step.
It's foundational, the first step towards finding strategies that actually work with your brain rather than just constantly beating yourself up for not meeting neurotypical expectations.
Okay, so speaking of strategies,
hmm
let's dive into some practical, evidence-based approaches. How can we manage this?
The fundamental principle, the core idea behind most effective strategies, is essentially to externalize time, to bring it out into the real physical world to compensate for what those internal timekeeping systems are struggling with.
Externalize time. Okay, so if our internal sense is unreliable, we need external cues. Let's start with something simple. Analog clocks. Why are these often recommended over digital?
It's interesting, right? It comes down to that visual, spatial representation of time. Seeing the hands physically move across the clock face gives a much more intuitive, visceral sense of duration as a continuous flow, almost like a journey around the dial.
Ah, so you see the chunk of time left, not just the number.
Exactly. It shows you visually, spatially, how much time has passed and how much is left in a way that can be more easily grasped than just, numbers flashing on a screen.
So put them in obvious places. Wear an analog watch.
Definitely. Keep that visual cue present and easily accessible.
Okay, that makes sense. It's less abstract, more of a tangible thing moving. What about those visual timers? I've seen the ones where the color disappears.
Those are fantastic tools. Things like the time timer, where that colored disc visually shrinks as time elapses, or even simple old-school hourglasses and basic kitchen timers, they all help make abstract time very concrete and visible for specific tasks.
You can literally see the time running out.
Precisely. Which can be much more motivating and grounding than just relying on an internal sense or even a future auditory alarm.
Alarms seem obvious, but you mentioned using them more strategically.
Absolutely. Frequent use is key. And not just for waking up in the morning. Think about setting alarms to prompt you to start a task, maybe to give you a heads up about upcoming transitions.
Like a 15-minute warning before you need to leave.
Exactly. A 15-minute warning, a 5-minute warning. And even setting alarms for regular check-ins with yourself throughout the day. Just a quick ping to check the time and refocus.
Like a little external nudge to bring you back to the present and check in with your schedule or your plan for the day.
You got it. And using descriptive labels for those alarms can be really powerful. They act like mini coaches.
Instead of just alarm.
Right. Label it time to wrap up this email or start getting ready for Sarah's meeting in 10 months. It gives your future self a clear, helpful instruction, not just a jarring sound.
Calendars and planners seem essential for almost everyone, but how can they be particularly helpful here? And what about digital versus paper? Any thoughts?
Both definitely have their own unique advantages. The absolute key, though, is consistent use. Whichever system you choose, you have to commit to actually putting things in it with enough detail and checking it regularly, multiple times a day.
Consistency is king.
It really is. Color-coding entries can make your schedule much more visually organized, easy to scan and digest quickly. Digital calendars are great for syncing across devices. Setting automated reminders, those can be lifesavers.
True, the phone reminders are useful.
But paper planners have their own magic. The physical act of writing engages motor memory, which can actually help solidify the information in your brain better for some people. And don't forget a shared family calendar, maybe on the fridge, or a shared app, invaluable for household coordination.
Good point. What about those endless to-do lists? They can sometimes feel overwhelming in themselves, can't they?
They certainly can, but written lists and notes, whether it's a formal to-do list, sticky notes plastered everywhere, or a whiteboard in a really visible spot, are incredibly useful for externalizing tasks and plans. Just getting them out of your head and onto paper or a screen.
Makes them feel more real, less likely to be forgotten.
Exactly. Seeing them written down makes them concrete. A good rule of thumb some people use is the do it now or write it down principle. If you can't do it immediately, get it written down somewhere reliable quickly before it vanishes.
Do it now or write it down. I like that. I've also heard about tracking your time. How does actually logging how you spend your time help with time blindness? Seems like it might just show you how bad you are.
Well, it might be revealing, but the goal isn't judgment. Time tracking, where you consciously record how you spend your time on different activities for a period, helps build a much more accurate, realistic awareness of your actual time usage.
Seeing where the time really goes.
Exactly. You might be really surprised to see where those seemingly lost minutes or even hours are actually going. You can use apps for this, a simple spreadsheet, or just keep a notebook for a few days to get a baseline understanding. Knowledge is power here.
Okay. And of course, we live in the age of apps. There's a whole universe of time management apps out there, it can feel like. Where do you even start?
It really can be overwhelming, but they often fall into a few helpful categories. You've got apps that function as focus timers, like Focus Keeper, implementing things like the Pomodoro technique.
We'll come back to Pomodoro.
Yep. Then there are apps that try to gamify focus or block distractions, like Forest app, or services like FocusMate that connect you with a virtual work buddy.
Body doubling, we'll touch on that too.
Right. Then your classic task managers like Todoist, Remember the Milk, Dynalist, AnyList. Lots of options there. Simple but powerful reminder apps like Do. Even apps designed specifically to help build routines like Brilly, or tools like Goblin Tools that help break down complex or overwhelming tasks into smaller steps.
Goblin Tools, that sounds intriguing.
It's pretty neat. And finally, if digital distractions are a big hurdle, dedicated app blockers or website blockers can be invaluable during focused work periods.
Okay, so quite a range of external tools to make time more visible, more concrete. Now, how do we actually structure our time and our tasks in a way that's more compatible with how someone experiencing time blindness operates?
Great question. A key principle here is task breakdown, sometimes called chunking. Large amorphous tasks, write report, clean house can feel incredibly daunting, almost impossible to start, especially when you have a weaker sense of the time involved.
They just feel huge and vague.
Exactly. So by breaking them down into smaller, very specific, and much more manageable subtasks, write outline, find sources, draft introduction, wipe kitchen counters, vacuum living room, you make them feel less overwhelming. It dramatically lowers the barrier to just getting started.
Makes sense. Small steps are easier to take. You could even set mini deadlines for those smaller chunks.
Absolutely. Mini deadlines for subtasks can add structure and keep momentum going.
Now, time estimation is clearly a major hurdle. We talked about underestimating. How can we get better, or at least compensate for that tendency?
Yeah, getting intrinsically better is hard, so compensation is key. The trick is to consciously, deliberately adjust your time predictions upwards. A common piece of advice, and it sounds extreme but often works, is to estimate how long you think a task will take, and then double it. Or maybe even triple it for certain types of tasks.
Double or triple it, wow.
Sounds like a lot, but it often ends up being more realistic. And related to that is always adding significant buffer time into your schedule. Buffer time for unexpected delays, interruptions, and, crucially, for transitions between tasks. Transitions always take longer than we think.
Right, the time it takes just to switch gears.
Exactly. Some people even find it helpful to plan for the potential worst-case scenario time needs. If everything goes wrong, how long might it take? Plan for that, and you'll often be pleasantly surprised when it doesn't.
Routines seem like they could provide a really helpful anchor, especially when time feels so slippery.
Oh, absolutely. Predictable daily routines, whether it's for your mornings, your evenings, or even just the first 30 minutes of your workday, provide invaluable structure. They reduce the mental effort needed for planning and initiating those transitions.
Takes the decision-making out of it.
Precisely. Starting with establishing just one simple, consistent morning routine, like maybe just getting dressed, having breakfast, taking meds, can often set a more grounded, predictable tone for the entire day.
Time blocking, actually scheduling specific blocks of time in your calendar for specific tasks, that sounds like it makes the time allocation really concrete, really visual.
It does exactly that. It transforms a vague to-do list into a tangible plan embedded in your visual schedule. 9:10 a.m., work on Project X report. And it's really important when time blocking to remember to include buffer time between those blocks. Don't schedule back to back to back.
Leave room for things to run over or just breathe.
Yes, and schedule in dedicated time for breaks. And importantly, even schedule in fun activities or downtime. Protect that time too.
The Pomodoro technique comes up a lot in productivity circles. Those focused work intervals followed by short breaks. How can that specifically help with time blindness?
It's really effective for several reasons. Using an external timer for those focused intervals, the classic is 25 minutes of work followed by a 5-minute break, actually makes the passage of time much more noticeable. You hear the timer go off, time is less likely to just slip away unnoticed.
Breaks up the amorphous blob of time.
Exactly. Those focused bursts can also aid sustained attention for people who struggle with it. And the built-in regular short breaks are crucial for preventing mental fatigue and burnout. And remember, the length of the work and break intervals can always be adjusted. Maybe you start with 15 minutes on, 3 minutes off, find what works for you.
Prioritizing tasks can be a real nightmare when everything feels equally urgent, or maybe equally not urgent until it's suddenly critical. Any tips there?
That's a huge challenge with ADHD executive functions. Simple methods can help bring clarity. Using something like a basic prioritization matrix plotting tasks based on urgency importance, or simply color-coding tasks in your planner or list based on priority level.
Red for must do today, yellow for should do, green for could do.
Something like that, or even just consciously deciding your strategy for the day. Are you going to tackle the easiest tasks first to build momentum and get some quick wins? Or tackle the hardest, most dreaded task first just to get it out of the way? Having a strategy is better than none.
And those breaks we mentioned with Pomodoro, they aren't just suggestions, are they? They're actually really important for maintaining focus, especially with ADHD.
Absolutely vital. Intentional, regular short breaks are crucial. They help reset attention, prevent mental fatigue, and combat that tendency towards hyperfocus, where you might get locked onto one thing for hours while completely losing track of time and everything else. Schedule them in.
Setting aside dedicated planning time seems like a really proactive way to get ahead of the potential chaos of time blindness.
It is. It feels like it takes time, but it saves time in the long run. Actually, scheduling specific recurring time slots just for planning and reviewing your schedule, maybe 15 minutes at the end of each workday to plan the next day, or 30 minutes on Sunday evening to plan the week can make a significant difference.
Planning the next day the evening before I hear that helps reduce morning overwhelm.
It really does. You wake up knowing what the priorities are instead of scrambling.
I like the idea of backward design for deadlines or appointments. It seems like it would make those far-off dates feel more concrete.
It's a great technique. You start with the final deadline or the appointment time and work backward. Map out all the necessary steps, estimate the time for each, using that doubling rule, add buffer, and schedule those intermediate steps into your calendar.
So you see the path to get there.
Exactly. And for appointments, a simple but powerful shift is to focus on your required departure time. Calculate when you need to leave the house, factoring in travel time and buffer, and set your primary reminders around that time, not just the appointment start time.
Focusing on leaving time. Smart. And just practically speaking, prepping things in advance seems like common sense, but probably extra helpful here.
Hugely helpful. Anything you can do to reduce friction and decision-making during busy transition times is gold. Preparing your lunch, laying out your clothes, packing your bag, gathering work materials the night before, it can significantly reduce that morning chaos and prevent those frantic, time-wasting searches.
The where are my keys moment.
We've all been there. Creating a designated landing pad near the door for essential items, keys, wallet, phone, glasses, medications can be a simple lifesaver. Everything lives there, everything goes back there.
Resisting that urge, that siren call, to do just one more thing when you know you're supposed to be stopping or moving on, that can be so incredibly difficult.
Oh, it's a very, very common pitfall. The brain gets stuck or sees something shiny, Consciously recognizing that impulse when it arises, there's that just one more thing feeling, and actively resisting it is a key behavioral adjustment. It takes practice to learn to interrupt that pattern.
Stick to the plan or the alarm.
Stick to the plan. And finally, while all this structure is clearly so important, we also need to build in some flexibility, right? Life inevitably throws curveballs. Absolutely. Rigid, perfect schedules often break. Allowing for some unscheduled flex time in your week, maybe some open blocks, and being mentally prepared to adjust your plans when unexpected things inevitably come up makes your whole system much more resilient and sustainable. It reduces feelings of failure when things don't go exactly as planned. You just adapt the plan.
Okay, so we've covered a lot on external tools and structuring time. Now, let's shift focus a bit inward, talk about some of the behavioral and cognitive strategies.
Right, because managing the external environment is only part of the picture. A key internal piece is learning to manage distractions more effectively.
The time bandits.
Exactly.
Right.
Identifying your personal time sinks, those specific activities, websites, apps, or even thought patterns where time just seems to evaporate without you realizing it is the first step. Then you can set clear rules and boundaries around them.
Like what kind of rules?
This might involve using those website blockers we mentioned during work hours, physically putting your phone on silent and out of sight, creating a dedicated workspace as free from interruptions as possible, or even setting specific time limits for potentially absorbing activities.
Motivation can also be a real challenge, can't it? Especially when facing tasks that feel boring, overwhelming, or just.
Ooh, huge challenge. Tackling motivation requires a multi-pronged approach. Sometimes using external rewards for completing tasks, even small ones, can help. Consciously focusing on the positive outcomes or benefits of getting something done, reminding yourself why you're doing it.
Connecting to the bigger picture.
Yes, or trying to connect the task to your future self. Future me will be so glad I did this. And don't underestimate the power of dopamine. Incorporating activities that naturally boost dopamine, like a short burst of exercise, listening to upbeat music, or getting some sunlight before tackling a difficult task, can sometimes provide that little activation energy needed to get started.
Accountability seems like it could provide that extra nudge we sometimes need to just start or stay on track.
It definitely can. Simply sharing your goals or intentions with someone you trust, a friend, a partner, a family member, a coach, can provide valuable external accountability. Just knowing someone else knows what you're supposed to be doing.
Makes you a bit more likely to do it.
Often, yes. And related to that is the concept of body doubling. This is where you simply work alongside someone else. They don't even need to be working on the same thing. It can be in the same physical space, like a library or a coffee shop, or even virtually using video calls or services like FocusMate.
Just having another person present, even silently working, creates a kind of external structure or focus.
Exactly. It's surprisingly powerful for enhancing focus and helping people stay on task, especially for tasks they find difficult to initiate or sustain alone.
Now, what about that negative self-talk we touched on earlier? The shame, the guilt. How can we actively address that internal critic?
This is so important. Actively working against that harsh internal dialogue and deliberately practicing self-compassion is vital. It means consciously reminding yourself again and again that time blindness and related ADHD challenges are neurological differences, not personal failings or moral shortcomings.
Shifting the frame from "I'm bad" to "my brain works differently."
Precisely. And focusing on acknowledging your effort and progress, no matter how small it seems, rather than constantly striving for some unrealistic ideal of perfect, neurotypical time management. Progress over perfection is the mantra.
Okay, let's move into mindfulness and self-awareness. This might seem a bit counterintuitive. How can focusing on the present moment actually help with something like time blindness, which seems so related to our perception of the past and future and planning?
It's a great question, and the connection isn't always obvious, but what's interesting is that mindfulness practices can actually help improve focus and attention regulation by strengthening the brain networks involved in attentional control. The prefrontal cortex again.
Training your attention muscle, essentially.
You could put it that way. By regularly practicing bringing your attention back gently to the present moment, to your breath, to bodily sensations, you can become less reactive to external distractions and internal mind wandering, both of which are major culprits in time slipping away unnoticed.
So it helps you stay more anchored in the now, making the now feel more solid, less likely to just vanish.
Exactly. And mindfulness also cultivates greater self-awareness overall. As you practice, you start to become more attuned to your internal states, noticing your energy levels dropping, feeling restlessness build, maybe even recognizing those subtle internal cues that might indicate you're starting to lose track of time or that you need to transition to something else.
So you catch yourself drifting sooner.
Potentially, yes. It can also help reduce the general stress and improve emotional regulation, which we know often intertwine with and exacerbate time management difficulties. A calmer mind can manage time better.
It feels important to stress, though, that the goal of mindfulness isn't necessarily to achieve some state of constant inner peace or a completely still, empty mind, right? Because that can feel pretty unattainable, especially with an ADHD brain.
Oh, absolutely critical point. For many people, especially those with active minds, aiming for a still mind can feel like an impossible and deeply frustrating goal. That's not it. The real benefit, the actual practice, comes from the repeated act of noticing when your attention has wandered off, and then gently, without judgment, redirecting it back.
So the noticing and returning is the exercise.
That's the core skill being developed. That gentle redirection strengthens those attentional networks over time.
Okay, that makes it feel much more accessible. So how can we actually weave mindfulness practices into our already busy, maybe chaotic lives without it feeling like just one more overwhelming item on the to-do list?
The key is really to start small, really small, and aim for consistency over intensity or duration. Even just 1 to 3 minutes of dedicated practice each day can begin to make a difference if done consistently.
1 minute. Even I could manage that.
Exactly. Simple breath awareness, just paying attention to the physical sensation of your inhales and exhales, maybe counting breaths, is a fundamental and highly portable practice. Body scans, where you slowly bring your attention to different parts of your body and just notice any sensations present without judgment, can also be very grounding.
I've also heard about sensory grounding exercises for bringing you back to the present quickly. How do those fit in?
Those are excellent in-the-moment tools. The five senses exercise is a classic example. You intentionally pause and notice. 5 things you can see right now. 4 things you can physically feel. Your feet on the floor, the chair supporting you. 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. And 1 thing you can taste. It's a simple but remarkably effective technique for pulling your awareness firmly back into the present environment.
Pulls you out of your head and into the world.
Instantly. What about incorporating mindfulness into things we're already doing anyway every single day? That's a fantastic strategy for integration. Mindful routine activities. Really paying full attention to the sensory details of everyday tasks. The feeling of the water and soap while washing dishes, the taste and warmth of your morning coffee, the sensation of the toothbrush can be a really accessible way to pepper mindfulness throughout your day without needing to carve out extra meditation time.
Just being more present with what's already happening.
Exactly. Mindful movement can also be great, especially for those who find sitting still difficult. Taking a walk and really focusing on the sensations of your feet hitting the ground, the air on your skin, the sights and sounds around you, or mindful stretching or yoga.
And you mentioned just labeling thoughts and emotions as they arise. How does that help?
It helps create a little bit of distance, a bit of perspective. When a strong emotion or a persistent thought arises, simply noticing it and mentally labeling it, that's worry, or there's planning mind again, or feeling impatient without getting swept away by it or judging it, can help reduce your entanglement. You see it as a mental event rather than being it.
Less likely to get carried away down a rabbit hole.
Exactly. And of course, there are many excellent mindfulness apps, Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, and others that offer guided meditations of various lengths and styles, which can provide helpful structure and support, especially when you're starting out. And finally, just setting informal check-ins with yourself throughout the day, maybe linking it to an existing habit like getting a drink of water, just pausing for a second and asking, where is my attention right now, can be a simple way to gently bring yourself back.
Okay, so it sounds like mindfulness helps us cultivate that internal sense of now, making the present moment feel more real and manageable. And we combine that internal work with all those external strategies we discussed earlier, the clocks, the timers, the lists, the schedules to help us manage the not now, the future.
Precisely. They really work hand in hand, strengthening the internal awareness muscle while also building robust external supports. They're complementary approaches, not either.
Got it. Finally, let's talk about where people can find ongoing support and resources. Because navigating time blindness, especially when it's linked with ADHD, can feel pretty isolating sometimes. Knowing where to turn is crucial.
Absolutely. And the good news is there are a lot of excellent resources available these days. Starting with books, there are many helpful ones out there that offer both a deeper understanding of ADHD and time management challenges, as well as practical workbooks for actually building specific skills.
Any particular titles that often get recommended? Foundational reads.
Sure. For really gaining a solid understanding of ADHD itself, classics like Driven to Distraction by Hallowell and Rady, or their more recent ADHD 2.0, offer invaluable insights. For more specifically tackling organization and time management, books like Organizing Solutions for People with ADHD by Kathleen Nadeau or ADD-Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life by Kohlberg and Nadeau are great practical guides.
Okay, good starting points. What about workbooks? Things with exercises.
Yes, workbooks can be really helpful for actively building skills. Things like Thriving with Adult ADHD by Phil Boissiere or The Adult ADHD Toolkit by Ramsey and Rustain contain practical exercises and strategies you can work through.
And the internet, of course, is overflowing with information, some good, some less so. Are there any reliable online resources or organizations you'd point people towards?
Definitely need to be discerning online, but reputable websites like Additude Magazine, that's Additude, they have a huge wealth of articles, webinars, and resources. Also, the major advocacy organizations, CHABD, which stands for Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and ADDA, the Attention Deficit Disorder Association. Both have excellent websites with reliable information and resources.
Additude, CHEDD, ADD.
Got it. And many established experts in the field also have informative websites, blogs, or YouTube channels where they share evidence-based strategies.
Connecting with other people who actually get it, who understand the challenges firsthand, that must also make a huge difference.
Oh, immensely. Support groups and online communities can be incredibly validating and helpful. They provide a space where you can share experiences without judgment, exchange practical coping strategies that have worked for others, offer mutual support and motivation. It really helps reduce that sense of isolation.
Knowing you're not alone in these struggles.
Exactly. And they can connect you with additional resources or local providers you might not have found otherwise. You can often find listings for groups both online and in person through organizations like CHADD and ADD, sometimes through online directories like Psychology Today, or even through local mental health providers or clinics.
And they come in different flavors, right? Peer-led, professionally run.
Yes, there's a variety. Peer-led groups, professionally facilitated groups. Some are general ADHD support. Others might focus on specific areas like workplace challenges or parenting with ADHD. Find one that feels like a good fit.
And finally, when should someone consider seeking more formal, professional help for time blindness and the related challenges?
If these challenges are significantly impacting your daily functioning, your work, your relationships, your self-esteem, or if you feel stuck and overwhelmed trying to manage on your own, seeking professional help is a really valuable step.
What kind of professionals might help?
Therapists who specialize in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, adapted for ADHD, can help you develop coping strategies and address negative thought patterns. Occupational therapists, OTs, can sometimes help with practical strategies for daily living skills. ADHD coaches focus specifically on building executive function skills like planning, organization, and time management.
Coaching sounds very practical.
It can be. And of course, consulting with a medical doctor or psychiatrist is important for diagnosis confirmation and discussing potential medication options, which can be very helpful for many with ADHD. Sometimes a comprehensive psychological or neuropsychological assessment can provide deeper insights into your specific cognitive profile and guide treatment planning.
So it really sounds like the path forward involves building a personalized toolkit of strategies, pulling from all these different areas we've discussed, and knowing where to find support when you need it.
Exactly that. It's rarely a single magic bullet. It's usually an ongoing process of experimentation, self-discovery, and finding the unique combination of tools, techniques, and supports that works best for you as an individual in your specific life context.
Okay, so maybe to try and bring this all together, it sounds like managing time blindness, especially when it's part of ADD or ADHD, is really a journey that involves understanding the underlying neurological differences, actively and consistently implementing practical strategies, and maybe most importantly, extending a lot of kindness and patience towards ourselves throughout the whole process.
That's a perfect summary, I think. The core areas to keep focusing on are making time more visible and concrete through those external tools, actively structuring your tasks and your time in more manageable ways, Working on those internal factors like managing distractions and boosting motivation, cultivating greater self-awareness through practices like mindfulness, and remembering that you absolutely don't have to navigate this alone, seek out and utilize the wealth of support that is available.
And remembering that finding the right mix of all these strategies, what works for you, is really a personal journey of exploration and adaptation. It's not one size fits all.
Absolutely. What works incredibly well for one person might be less effective or even counterproductive for another. It's truly about being willing to experiment, to be curious, learn from what works and what doesn't for you, and be flexible enough to adjust your approach as needed over time.
And the ultimate goal here isn't about achieving some mythical state of perfect time management where you're suddenly never late or never lose track of anything ever again.
Not at all. That's an unrealistic and unhelpful pressure to put on yourself. The real goal is about developing effective compensatory strategies. Strategies that allow you to function more effectively and consistently in your daily life, reduce the significant stress and anxiety that time blindness often creates, and ultimately lead a more fulfilling and less frustrating life, ADHD and all.
So remember, as you're working on this, that patience and persistence really are key. And those moments when things inevitably don't go exactly as planned. They aren't failures. They're just data points. Opportunities to learn, adjust your strategy, and try again.
Precisely. Self-compassion in those moments is critical. A productive and fulfilling life is absolutely within reach, even with these challenges. Building those robust external supports and cultivating that greater internal awareness are the essential keys to thriving.
So maybe as you go about your day after listening to this deep dive, take just a moment to think. Was there one strategy, maybe two, something we discussed that really resonated or sparked an idea for you?
Just pick one small thing.
Yeah, just one, and maybe make a small, realistic commitment to try incorporating it into your routine in the coming days or week. It's really all about taking those small, consistent steps towards a better understanding and hopefully a more manageable relationship with time. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.